Hi, good day. Welcome to CMS. In this video, we'll continue work in the cost estimation and now we'll present how CMS will give us a cost breakdown for our project. Let's go for the cost estimation. Activity cost breakdown. CMS will direct us for this page. We'll find here this above buttons. This top left button, that's to travel through CMS page. These blue buttons to go through the components of this page, the cost breakdown, and here the steps which we have to follow. Let's start with step 1, which is click to run. CMS complete step 1, go for step 2. Okay. Step 2 is telling the information in the maroonish color cells are automatically calculated, but you are able to modify them if required and insert the missing data, then go for step 3. So let's proceed now for step 2. We'll find here CMS make a cost breakdown for all these activities, which is the earthwork, concrete work, block, plastering, finishing, MEP, waterproofing, metal, timber, landscape, boundary wall, and lump sum work, which we need to insert it here, and he will help us to provide the profit of our projects. Let's go now through the cost breakdown and complete step 2. For earthwork, which is here, we will find CMS divide the earthwork for the excavation work, the road base under the BCC, filling with existing sand, which is the existing sand come from the excavation, not imported from outside. Then filling with sand, which is imported from outside. Remove disposal, which is the balance sand, which must be removed outside the site. The road base under slab grade. The anti-termite under foundation. The anti-termite under slab on grade. Actually, CMS already calculated all these quantities according to the levels of the excavation and levels of the slab on grade, and the quantities of the foundation and the quantities of the tie beams and all the substructure quantities. CMS did all the calculation. He provide you all the excavation quantity. He provide you the required road base quantity, but you have to insert for him what is the depth of the road base which is required below the BCC. He will provide you the filling with the existing sand, the quantity which can be used to refill from the existing sand, the quantity of the imported red sand for the project, the required removal, disposal, the road base below slab on grade. If it's there, you have of course to mention the thickness. Suppose it is a 15 cm. As we saw, there is a quantity added there for the road base and quantity also reduced from the sand, and the area which will be treated by anti-termite below the foundation and the area below the slab on grade. This all is calculated directly by CMS. What else? We have also the materials. CMS calculated for us the cost of those materials according to the raw materials which we already inserted there. CMS also calculated for us the cost of the equipment which is required to do this earthwork. We will enter only the number of the equipment which is working at the site. When we increase the number of the equipment, the duration will be increased. So this will be important for us to manage our schedule, as we will see later. Because we inserted the cost and the productivity for each equipment in the sheet of the cost estimation in the resource prices in the equipment. As we saw here, for the shovel, we insert the price per day and the productivity also per day, the excavator per day, price per day and the productivity per day, compactor rent per day and also the productivity per day, and here the waste removing trucks, how much per one truck, which is 16 cubic meters, as CMS considering, and the productivity also per day, how many cubic meters can be done every day. According to this rate and this productivity, CMS give us the cost for the equipment according to the quantities automatically. Let's go back. Accordingly, CMS give us the cost, the rate per cubic meter, and the cost for this equipment. Also, CMS calculated for us the cost of the water, the cost of the compaction, the total cost for this earthwork, the price per meter for each item, the total price which will be presented in the BOQ after adding the profit ratio, as we'll see later. By the way, it will be added automatically for each activity, as we'll see later. Here also the price which will be presented in the BOQ per cubic meter, the rate per meter here. Because we didn't insert yet the required profit ratio, it's considered here equal 1. That's why the price equal the cost. Here the price of this division is equal the cost. Of course, it will not be like this. After adding the profit ratio, this will be changed, as we'll see later. That's for the earthwork. Let's go for the next division, which is the concrete. For the concrete work, it is started here with a calculator for a concrete component and the cost if you will mix on site the material and the required manpower for pouring of the concrete, plus also the required manpower for the post tension if required. Let's talk about this calculator. It is mentioned here all the ratio of the component of the concrete, which is the cement weight for the cubic meter, the fine aggregate, which is sand, and its ratio for the coarse aggregate, which is the gravel, then the water cement ratio, and the admixtures percentage. And here the specific gravity for each element of this. For the cement is 3.12 ton per cubic meter. For the sand it is almost 2.63 ton per cubic meter. For the coarse aggregate 2.68 ton per cubic meter. For the water, of course, it is 1 ton per cubic meter, and the admixtures. And here we consider that the coarse aggregate will be twice of the fine aggregate. According to this, CMS make the calculation according to the volume equation and give us all the quantities required for the sand and the gravel and cement and the water and admixtures. Accordingly, CMS calculate the cost for the cubic meters of concrete. That's if you will make the mix on site. Or we already inserted the cost for each cubic meter for each element for the ready mix concrete, where, as we did before, in the resources price. The concrete, we have here all the prices of the concrete. Concrete for PCC, which is blinding, concrete for foundation, for tie beam, for slab on grade, for columns, for walls, for slabs and beam, for screed, and also the price of the concrete admixtures. So easily CMS can follow this and give you the required cost. This must be inserted even if you are working in the ready mix concrete. That's the manpower for the boring. We consider here the labor gang is 1 mason and half helper, and both will give you a productivity of pouring, as we'll see here in this schedule. And that's the post tension installation. The productivity for one steel fixer is 12 square meter per day. That's to calculate how much the cost of post tension installation, as we'll see later. Let's go now for the breakdown itself. We'll find here CMS divided the concrete work for this activities. BCC under foundation, RCC for the foundation, BCC under strap, RCC for the strap beam, RCC for the neck column, BCC under the tie beam, RCC for tie beam, slab on grade, columns, core wall, the beams and slabs and ribs till the mezzanine floor or podium, the beams and ribs and the slab also for the typical floors, and here for the roof, and the special concrete as we inserted in the core wall and special concrete here in the quantity surveying here. whatever we inserted here and give a description in this location as per this description, you will find that's inserted already in the cost breakdown with the same description. CMS now have all the quantities of the concrete for each activity. You have already also automatically the price for the concrete. So either you keep it or you need to change if you will go for the casting on site or mixing on site. CMS also provide you the price for the concrete according to our input. He give you the total cost of the concrete. Then CMS actually divide the cost of the concrete work for a material and manpower. For material, which is the quantity of the concrete, so the cost of the concrete, here is the price of the concrete according to our input in the resources price. So he calculates for you the quantity of the concrete. And he consider also the logic margin for the concrete waste. Here is the steel, quantity of the steel for each element or for each activity, and the cost of the steel according to also the resources price. Here is the shutter work, the cost of the shutter work. CMS calculates the shutter work according to his calculation for the surfaces of each concrete element, and accordingly he calculates the required shutters and the required timber for this, and he considering the required material to be purchased and the margin and the waste for this material according to his calculation in the material takeoff as we saw before. Just for reminding, we'll go for the material takeoff. If we go for the concrete section, that's all the description of the concrete elements as we mentioned now. The quantities of the concrete, either plain concrete or reinforced concrete, that's the total concrete. And here is the shutter, the approximate shutter on timbers, the required timber for per linear meter and required plywood. According to this, he calculated the cost of the timber. And when you enter the horizontal and vertical shutters consumption per floor, how much percentage, he will calculate the consuming of these shutters and the margin of this shutter. So let's go for the horizontal shutter and tell him we have each floor loses of 20%. He will consider this and he calculate the actual consumption for this material. For the vertical floors, if you consider 20 or 25% according to your element shape and site condition and according to your workmanship. If you tell him 20%, you mean that you will use the timber which you will provide only for 5 times. As we said, that's according to your site requirement. So according to this percentage, CMS calculated the required shutter and the consuming and margin of these shutters. Back for the cost estimation. So that's how CMS calculated the shutter for each element. Plus the scaffolding required, CMS also will calculate the required scaffolding cost. He will give you a figure. If you agree with this figure, if you have a prices equally or near for this figure, you can keep it or you can change it if you require. Here, if we have a hardy block coming from the ribs slab, it will be calculated automatically. Don't need to insert anything. CMS calculate here the cost of the curing. Because you insert for CMS a price for the post tension in the resources price, he considered that you will have a post tension for all the slabs. If you agree for this, you will keep the area like this, don't change. If you not agree for this and you mention you have only some area, not all the area have post tension, you will insert only the area of the post tension in this column. At the end, you will find CMS give you all the required cost for the materials of the concrete work and the manpower for the concrete work. He gave you here the post tension installation cost, labor cost for post tension installation, as we informed here. You will insert here the productivity. Accordingly, CMS will give you a cost of the installation. Here is the cost of pouring. We will mention here how much this labor gang will produce for you in the concreting. We're considering here that, for example, one mason and helper will give you a 15 cubic meters in the BCC, a 50 cubic meters in the raft, 15 cubic meters in the strap, 12 cubic meter for the columns, and so on. You can also modify this according to your site requirement and your workmanship capability. Accordingly, CMS calculate for you the rate for this concrete pouring, and that's the cost of concrete pouring. Here is the formwork manpower. What is the manpower required for the shuttering and de-shuttering and backpropping? This all must be considered, and we will see how to be inserted in the CMS when we are going to talk about the scheduling. CMS already have a productivity in his database. If you require to change it, we will see how to be changed later when we are talking about the scheduling. But just for information now, if you like to confirm the productivity, you need to go for the main page and go for scheduling, then manpower and productivity. You will find here all the type of manpower required for your civil work in your project, and here you'll find also the activities. Then you will insert the productivity for the manpower. If you need to change only, just modify it. That's for now, but of course later when we are talking about the scheduling, we will speak about this in details. Again, for cost estimation and concrete. According to these productivities, CMS calculate the rate of the manpower for the formwork, as we inform now, and also the same for the rebar. How many tons we have rebar for each activity. The cost also for the manpower in rebar work, also with the same. CMS have a database of the productivities for the steel work, and that's the cost of manpower for rebar work. And here is the total labor cost per cubic meter if it is required for your reference to ensure this amount is reasonable for you or not. And here is the total cost for the concrete work, the cost per cubic meter for full concrete work, and that's the price which will be presented in the BOQ with the price for each cubic meters. Till now we have the profit ratio still 1. We didn't insert any profit for this project. That's why the cost equals the price, and of course, as we said, it is not logic and it will be changed as we'll see. That's for now. Next video will continue the cost breakdown for other project aspects. Thanks for watching and see you in next video.